Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We are at it once again. I am Seahawks Brendan Nelson, and I am joined by Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How you doing this week, Brandon?
I'm doing amazing, Brendan. We march inch and inch closer to getting to game time here. All
Yeah,
this all long off season. It was a long June, long May, but
always is.
August is
Always
whistling along.
is.
I'm stoked.
Yeah, we are right on the precipice of it, and we are back for one more episode of Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest. And next time we meet up over on his channel, we will have played a game. Not a real game, but a game that will be on TV, that will have actual NFL rules, that will be overseen by NFL referees. So I think that it's reasonably safe to say that the excitement is peaking. Even though this may not be the greatest season ever, excitement is peaking in this fan base.
It's football. It's always going to get the heart a little bit palpable out there, you know? So this is the nature of things. Everyone's got hope at the start of the season too, right? Hope springs eternal and you never know. That's the beauty, especially this sport where anything can happen.
That's right. So we got some stuff to go over. I know we haven't played the actual game yet, but I figure we've got the mock game. That was last week, and that's always interesting. I thought about going, but ended up not being able to do it. But I was still able to watch a good chunk of the game.
Yeah.
A couple of brave individuals decided to post that online, which I guess they shouldn't do that. I guess they don't like it when you do that, but I guess on some level I appreciate it.
I love the
So,
effort on their part. Thank you.
yeah, definitely.
Doing the Lord's good work out there.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go ahead and start there. We've got some training camp stuff. Things are still happening with the team over in camp, even though the bigger milestones have already been set in previous weeks. And then we've got this game coming up in 2 days on the 13th. So we'll dive into that a little bit. I know previewing a preseason game is hard, but there are some things you can definitely talk about, things to get excited about. And before we're done today, I think we're going to do a little bit on the maybe trade rumors. I'm not going to call them trade rumors yet, but maybe they're like rumors of rumors, an extrapolated rumor. I don't know what you want to call it, but
Whispers in the wind.
yeah, but it honestly makes sense. And there are a few professionals who have already called attention to the fact that this makes sense.
Absolutely. When you're speaking, of course, about the Roquan situation.
Yes.
And that's absolutely right. I think there's while it's not like you said, there's no hardened trade rumors here. So I don't want to have us being accused of artificially pushing something. There's just a lot of reasons why that could, to me, make a lot of sense on a general rational level, if you logically put it together a little bit.
Okay, so the mock game played in front of, I wonder how many tickets they actually sold to that one. I know it was cheap. If you want to watch cheap football, that's about the only chance you're going to have with the way prices are going. I think it was like $17. But we learned some stuff from that game. We learned some stuff, even though there isn't really that much tackling. There isn't really like they'll just blow a play dead just because sometimes. It's not governed by actual NFL rules, but what did you take away from what you heard and in some cases saw from that mock game?
Well, I think we would be remiss if we don't lead with the quarterbacks because that's what's on everybody's forefront of their mind. And it does seem to be that Drew Lock vastly outperformed Geno Smith in this game. And the tape relatively matched that up. Certainly these angles watching quarterback play. And is his helmet turning here to look off a safety? Is he just staring something down? But also notes I got from people. I had a guy that was in the stands who sent me notes. Shout out to Ethan Tech World. I'm sure I think just you too. And he got me some notes on it. And he really spoke to there being a real, it was very easy to tell, easy to see, which was Drew Lock was dropping back in the pocket and having a plan with where he wanted to go with the ball, being decisive. Geno Smith was being in the pocket and being indecisive, doing a little bit of holding on the ball too much. And that it was very clear to him, not even on little skills, like the first thing out of his mouth when he was telling me about it. And I think that's telling along with what we saw on the tape. And that's, okay, does Drew Lock start to take a step forward in this battle from my perspective? Yes, because it's not just based on the scrimmage. It's also based on, look, neither quarterback has taken the reins here throughout camp totally. But Lock has gotten a couple more blurb spots in there of having won the day, having had at least been a little bit better today. Oh, he trying to turn it on near the end of this practice. And so that first is the first thing that jumps out to me. Tariq Woolen continues how we saw it in practice this week after the scrimmage. It's, as I say with him, it's peppered in there, just like with Kobe Bryant, who also played well in the game, also broke up a pass. The Walker run was nice. He's bouncing it outside, showing the stop-start ability and then the speed, the quick speed to get to that. That's, again, with him, not just a fast guy. That 10-yard split at 1.55 is legitimate. So it's the burst to the speed. And Walker has both of those elements, which, as I'm sure we're going to talk about soon, is going to be maybe pretty important because we have something popping up on that scale of things at the running back position. And then beyond that, though, it was good to see some guys getting the catches in, but it was hard to take a whole lot away. Like you said, you're not getting the intensity of the violence of the pads. They're definitely out there protecting each other in how they're going about business. So I thought that part was telling, but I'm locking in a lot on the quarterback and how I'm watching it. Colby Parkinson getting a catch, the use of running backs, the use of what was weird to me, Brendan, was the reports of they were doing basic statue stuff with Geno in the pocket. And then you were hearing that they were doing mobility stuff with Drew Lock, like rolling him more to the edge, and which is more of the designs of this offense, quite frankly. So I know we'll get into the quarterback battle and where it probably sits right now, but just in this game alone, I thought that certainly Drew Lock was the thing that I came away from going, okay, maybe somebody's starting to actually, those reins are sitting on top of the horse. We're bucking on the wagon through the trail, and there's a cliff here. Somebody's got to grab the reins. Who's going to be the one? And it feels like maybe Drew's starting to go like, well, I guess I'll do it,
Yeah. The thing when I watched a couple of the clips and when I read people who actually watched every play, people who were at the game, the one thing that I really noticed is it seemed like there were definitely many plays where Locke wanted to go deep, but he didn't. He took his check down. He kept it simple. He kept it short. And that's going to be a big deal. That's going to be a big deal that he can keep a lid on those kinds of tendencies. Because, look, the deep ball is kind of the thing that separates Drew Lock from other quarterbacks in the league who are just in that area where he's just kind of like, not good. He's got that big arm, but in that game, he actually kept a lid on it. There was, I think, one deep shot where he barely missed Bo Melton for a 60-yarder, but he was keeping it underneath. He was hitting his checkdowns, hitting the quick stuff, hitting just stuff around the line of scrimmage, which is going to be important in this offense. And contrasting that, I heard that Geno Smith is starting to hold onto the ball a little too long leading into that game. And then he started doing it in the game as well, which if Geno's holding onto the ball too long, he doesn't really have anything else. That's the one thing that you look at and you go, okay, he's not mobile or agile. He's not got a big arm. He's not super accurate. He's not a wizard at reading defenses, but he can get the ball out of his hands quickly. He can do the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. So if he loses that, there's nothing really left except a guy.
Well, and to your point on this, there's no reason for him to have lost it. Like you said, should be his biggest advantage to have over Locke. Locke doesn't have the time of being here through a year. Locke is new to this offense. It would be understandable for Locke to take a little bit of a bumpy road to get to the point of figuring this thing out and taking a bit of time. With Geno, though, you had the year. You've known Russell's out of town all off season. You should have decisiveness. You should know exactly where to be going with the ball, unless everything is just being so well covered up by this defense because all these young corners I don't think it's that. I think maybe that's a little bit of a factor into it here. And I don't just think Geno's getting bad luck of them really covering guys. I think it's, again, to your point, this is a big issue, even though it's a very small thing within the early parts of training camp, because it's the thing he should have and do. Absolutely.
Right. I will say, though, it seems like that mock game kind of awakened something in Geno, because I've heard the last 2 days in camp have been his best days so far. There were several people who pointed out at camp that he looks a lot better than he did before that game and during that game. So it seems like maybe that game kind of awoke something in him. And I also heard Drew Lock was really good yesterday. It was. So maybe we've got a little bit of an actual competition going, like a competition of two guys sharpening each other. Iron sharpens iron, rather than just we've got two guys and we'll see what happens.
Right. You want somebody to be able to fight against it where somebody's truly won the job, as opposed to, well, he's not as miserable as he is. which, you were a little worried about early in camp where nobody was jumping forward going, is that what this is going to be? And indeed, I think we're at least starting to see signs of it not. And Geno needs to, man. This is your one chance. Both of these guys. And I think I get the impression Locke understands it. And I think Geno does. But, if you're waiting to right now to turn it on in camp here, it's like, get going here. And one of the reasons why, too, Brendan and I have continued to say, let's let this camp battle play out all the way up as far as it takes for Carroll to make that determination of, is Geno just getting a little bit struggling early in camp and okay, now he's going to light on fire, or is Locke really taking what is it? I think that takes a couple of weeks of time, and you can't just you'd love to make that determination early in camp, but I don't think you can because of that. You've got to let the battle sort itself out. Don't you agree?
Yes. I think that this year is the perfect year to do just that. I don't know how you could possibly make a determination before the preseason anyway.
Right.
Let's at least let a couple preseason games play out before we even have this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. You're just hearing chatter for Locke. You're just hearing a lot of chatter for, let's get him in. And I put it out there and said, I wouldn't mind seeing it right now, but I can understand waiting and being patient. And then it kind of also the light bulb went on for me, Brendan, with this on how they did it with the Russell Wilson situation. Because Wilson came in, he had basically won the job almost from the moment of coming in training camp. Every reporter was telling you he looks better than Tavares Jackson and he looks better than Matt Flynn. But they didn't end up starting him, even as he balled out the first two preseason games until the third preseason game. And I think Carroll's looking at that as like a good model to utilize here with Locke, even if Locke does get that early lead.
Yeah. And it makes sense, right? Like coaches are stubborn. They're not going to see two things from a guy and go, okay, my preconceived conception of that player has been completely changed because I saw him have 2 days where there was something else. Like if Carroll has it in his head that Geno's better than Locke, he won't and he shouldn't have his mind changed by a couple of practices or even a mock game.
Right.
It should be a lot of stuff over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
There's a line that coaches have to walk between being stubborn and being wishy-washy. And It's hard, but you got to find it.
Especially with quarterback battles, because the fan base is always there pushing you for they're always pushing on your shoulder to do this move or do that move when you're trying to employ that patience.
Okay, so that's most of the stuff to do with the QB battle. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. Even though this year's probably not going to be a great year and neither of these quarterbacks are going to be our long-term quarterback in all likelihood, we still want them to at least be competent because, well, number one, it's just not going to be any fun to watch if they're just like Nathan Peterman. But also, you want somebody who's at least good enough to let the other players on offense develop around them. You don't want somebody who's going to airmail every pass 10 yards over, DK Metcalf's head or to hop it to Dwayne Eskridge every other time. Like, no, you want somebody who's going to help these guys at least get the ball.
Yes. And to your point, progression is the word that you just said there that stands out to me within that. This is not only about what this season is, it's moving into the future. It's why, Brendan, and I don't like the idea of tanking. And I think you have to establish a winning culture. You have to establish a player understanding that we're progressing towards something. You should progress as a player as we progress towards this goal that we are trying to ascend to. And I don't think you do that with the flip of the light switch, as I've put as my metaphor for this. You've got to do it as an instilled philosophy within your organization and this is the thing that I do trust in Carroll as a guy that has knocked him in some different parts here and there. This is a place I've always given him credit for in the respect of building this kind of culture that can establish this ascent. It's one reason I think both you and I wonder if maybe he's at his best. We've thought at times this guy's at best really just needs young teams. That's why, again, he did great in college and had that turnover of the rosters. You give him a roster that's aged in 7-8 years underneath him and they all start tuning him out, but you give him those young, hungry dogs and he's in his wheelhouse.
Right. Real quick here, we got a super chat from the Snail. Thank you for the $5. Dr. Disrespect has been the best quarterback. I saw that clip at the 49ers camp. Pretty good.
Arm was legitimate. Yeah. That was 60 yards. 60 yards from the doc. Mm-hmm. I think I could legit get 45. I get 45, but I don't think I could touch 60.
I have no idea what I could get. I've heard this and I've heard that about Trey Lance so far. I'll say that. Like, I've heard some good things. I've heard some bad things. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But it's been a up and down training camp for those guys so far.
Sounds a little bit like it was how he was in the game with us, where he's going to make the magnificent play for you, but then he's also going to have a hard time doing the consistent things, which is again becomes the opposite of what they had gotten from Garoppolo before. What that does to that Niner offense and whether or not that's enough to help plus side to the offense versus the loss of Garoppolo, we'll see. But that is, I think, what you're going to see this year is I've long lamented, you got to give this kid some time. And I think it's going to take more than just 1 year to expect him to be at his best. He still will eventually, I think, be good, but he's one of those quarterbacks to me. They're not always this way, but the 21-year-olds might take that 2 years. He'll be still younger than Will Levis after this season, to put it in perspective. So, you gotta give it that time, I guess, but I know the Niners fan base is super impatient.
Yeah, it was just midway through last season. They're thinking about firing Kyle Shanahan. How silly does that sound now?
I was the one, dude, I couldn't believe it. I'm the one over here defending Shanahan at that time on my channel. I'm like, my chat's like, I had Niner fans come in. I'm like, you guys, what do you talk about? He's one of the bright young coaches. The thing, everyone's giving him this title because he's Shanahan's kid. So no, because he knows how to structure a modern offense, and he does it all around a running game, which is not easy to do. And he almost doesn't need a passing game. That's not easy to do, and you don't just do that with by happenstance. And that was one I couldn't understand. So this is another one with me with the Niner fans. Be patient. The problem is that they know they're in their window, Brendan, as we've learned. And when you're in your window doesn't last long. They probably looking at us and what we had with our LOB era, and they're like, look, we got all these top end guys. We have 5-6 positions, maybe some of the best in the league. And we're going to maybe watch our quarterback have to sit and wait on his development. Who knows where you're at a year from now.
Right. Okay. So other stuff from the mock game, like you said, Tariq Woolen. And by the way, we might talk about this a little more later, but he's going to start in this preseason game. So things have come along much quicker than I expected for Woolen, and I loved him. I think he's awesome. I was a huge fan of him, but I didn't think it was going to come along this quickly. Now, when you get to actual games, it could easily go the other way. And I think we see that happen all the time with players going from training camp to preseason to an actual game. But he's turning heads. There was a post on Twitter about how I have not seen Metcalf get open on Woolen, but maybe once this whole camp. Like whenever they're working together, Woolen's doing the business. He's doing it to Tyler Lockett as well. It's actually kind of crazy to hear. So, what do you are you kind of thinking that maybe we're going to see more from Woolen this year as opposed to it being kind of a red shirt?
Yes. What I think it takes to get to there is that consistent ascent that we talked about last week on my show about you start in your OTAs, rookie OTAs. You're not even with the vets. Then you get to the final OTA camp. Then you get to training camp. Then you get to the scrimmage. Then we get to the first preseason game. And at every point you're popping. And in between on practices, you're popping. And it gets to that point where it's undeniable to keep you off the football field. And certainly you look at this at first blush and say, well, Sidney Jones has the concussion, so they're elevating him up to start. But they're elevating him up to start over Artie Burns, Brendan, at that point. Because I'm guessing Kobe's getting the start on the other side, right? Or is it already getting this side?
Sounds like it's going to be Kobe and Woolen starting.
Right. And maybe you're protecting it. Maybe Carroll would go, well, that's not indicative of that. We're just protecting the vet. But I think to your point on looking at this, I think it's notable. And Carroll was asked about it today and referencing in his press conference on that exact question you ask, referencing back to Richard Sherman in his first year and making again the comparisons to there. And I don't think he was doing that by happenstance. It was like, well, it's like with Richard when we came here, we were just getting him along, and he just kept showing and showing. And then by week 6, we had him going. And I almost feel like Carroll's doing a little bit of a, subconscious tell there of going, yeah, if he keeps up where he's going here, it's going to be just like that kind of ascent that we saw with Richard. Yeah, it's not going to be week 1, but he will be on that path to start here by this season much earlier than any of us thought.
Right. You saw Sherman was in the building also, right? Like he's actually advising Carroll on this stuff. So I guess that relationship is just good now. I guess they're cool with each other.
So weird how some of that, why he'd come back this year. It's just next year. I don't know. Yeah, it's whatever,
Yeah. Another one of my favorite developments from not only the mock game, but training camp in general has been Ken Walker. And we kind of already knew that he was going to do a lot of great stuff carrying the ball. good power, good vision, good agility, good burst, good speed. But the reason why I wasn't in love with him and the reason why I wasn't sure if I totally loved the pick was my question was, can he play on third down? Can he play on third down? Something that didn't come up a lot when he was in college. He caught 13 passes in 3 years, and he was not considered to be a very good blocker, but it seems like so far in camp and in the mock game, catching passes out of the backfield has been a huge part of what he's brought to the table, so he can do it. It seems very clear now that he just wasn't asked to do it in college, and I've even heard some positive things about his blocking so far, although as a rookie, you would expect him to make some mistakes there, okay? But this guy might be the complete package, which I wasn't totally expecting.
He might be, and you had a right to question that. It was a situation. I think you look back at Michigan State with the quarterback play and their passing offense in general, and you go, they just weren't looking to try to do much of featuring that. While the Hawks have tried to feature, it sounds like in camp, a lot more getting it out to the running backs. But he had to your point, 65-yard screen pass taken for a touchdown at practice yesterday. And again, in the scrimmage, of course, was featured as well. So he is making the most of those opportunities. My personal question with him is more at this point, because we've seen him do what he does outside of actual game action, where we're going to have guys really ripping and tearing to get him down to the ground. Does he have a big enough body at the NFL level to still get through those tackles? He's not at that ideal is like 220, 225. To me, this guy's probably game day running out about 212, 213. And maybe he will. This is just it was my slight worry with him on tape and watching, where it's like, okay, I know you're fast. I know you'll be quick. I know you can shake guys. But can the power element, when you need to call upon it, still be as good as it was for you at the college level? Because he was able to use that at the college level. And maybe it will. I'm hoping it will go through. I still do love the pick. I will say this, Brendan, it does, as people were trying to understand why that pick happened at the time. And we see, again, a little growing tightness with Penny. We'll get to it in a second. But this is, no Carson retiring. The pick makes so much more sense, and it made sense to us at the time, but this is where it makes sense. This is why you make that pick, is because the running back room was not what everybody thought it was at the time, and you had to get that insurance in there. And it does look even better from that respect, Brendan, because they didn't catch them now in itself in a bind where they're out there looking for some weird trade on the open market because they're not sure if Penny's going to hold up. Or we're going, it's going to be DJ Dallas time 24/7.
Other than that, I would say that my attention was grabbed by the fact that it seems like Abe Lucas has kind of seized control of that right tackle spot. So we now have 2 rookies starting at tackle, and I'm all for it. It sounds cool to me. Both guys can't handle Darrell Taylor, but that's probably more of a positive than a negative.
Monster.
Yeah. How many? Before this camp, I was thinking that Taylor might be like a 10 to 12 sack guy.
Same.
But now I'm thinking he might be that like 14 to 16 sack a year guy.
Same. Yeah, I'm in the same point. I mean, when you hear guys who are watched at camp last year, and I take this for granted, these reporters don't always give you the best of tidbits. Sometimes they do have on especially the old school guys, where they want to just give you the kind of like, this guy made a catch, that guy. They're not going to give you any of the, this guy looked super quick going into his stand. They won't kind of get into something deep with it. But when they note, and they all note with all of them that he looks bigger and he looks twitchier and quicker, and he was already bringing that package last year of those elements, and he's only improved upon them, which again you would expect now, in 2 years removed from the major injury where he had a rod taken out of his leg, that it would maybe take him a little bit of time to finally get around here and be ready to roll. So I think I'm the same place. I'm like, I don't know if he'll get into the crazy Myles Garrett, TJ Watt phase, but what's the level below that, but not at the Frank Clark 12 sack range, and that does seem to be a little bit of where we might be able to see him at.
Yeah, but I'm excited. Apparently, Cross and Lucas are starting in the first preseason game as well, so it seems like Lucas has more or less usurped that role. So I doubt they get to play against TJ Watt, but if they do, then that's quite a first test, I guess.
We will say, yeah, exactly. Well, that's dropping you in the deep end, isn't it? No, son, you don't need those doggy battles.
That's right. So that's I think most of the stuff coming out of that game and most of the stuff coming out of camp later. Mostly positive signs. I would say most of the negative stuff has to do with some of these injuries. And going into this preseason game, it doesn't seem like anything looks that bad, but it's going to be bad enough to keep quite a few players out.
Yeah.
So I have heard that Rashad Penny is out, Artie Burns, Sidney Jones, Trey Brown, although he's been out the whole time, so that's not surprising. And let's see, Jordan Brooks out, LJ Collier out, Ryan Neal out. He's been in the boot for a while now, though, so that's old news at this point. So we're missing a handful of guys, but Eskridge as well. Freddie Swain also showed up as well, actually now. Mostly minor stuff. It's expected that they'll be back soon, but when a door closes, another door opens. This is going to give the opportunity for some young guys to get on the field and show what they can do. So let's start talking about this preseason game. What are you looking for from the guys who are going to be playing?
Well, specifically, I think obviously I'm going to be locked in very close on what the quarterback battle is going on. But on the defensive side of the ball, you brought up a guy I can't say I haven't learned his name yet. That's how I knew he is of the team. But you were kind of high on him, and initially we were talking, I think, a week or two ago, and I kind of poo-pooed it. But then others were saying that when they're at the scrimmage, they saw him play, and he was looking good and flying all over the field. Help me with the name,
Blanco, the linebacker from the Bearcats, right?
Yeah, that guy.
Joel Dublanco.
Joel Dublanco sounds like a Bond villain. I'm hopeful with him, man. And we're going to be, again, as a point later in the show, talking about this, about a middle linebacker addition that might help this team to maybe sow some of my worry on this. But I look at that position on this team right now, and I do truly think that might turn out to be kind of one of the Achilles heels of the team, in the respect of not just from the standpoint of not having good enough talent on the front line, but a double dose, also not having the depth to sustain. And having a drop off from that talent that's still, I think Jordan will be fine, but I'm not sure how Cody, and then the backup to Cody will be even worse than Cody. So it's like you're going from bad to worse a little bit potentially there in that situation. And I'm not sure of the options behind him. I'm hopeful of them. I haven't seen them, so I don't want to make any determination on Donker or Blanco, the names these guys have. I'm not going to make any final determination on them, but I am a little bit concerned because you don't have anything there that I would say is, they're bringing Reuben Foster in. There certainly as well a little bit of concern on their part too. Where do you stand on that?
The inside linebacker spot?
Yeah.
Well, I don't mind giving a group of people some tryouts this year. This is not going to be a great year anyway. I don't hate the idea of just saying, okay, let's make sure we're not letting something really good go here. Yeah. I'm thinking about like Mark Lewinsky, where we never really gave him a chance. We had several years to do so. We let him go thinking he's nothing, and then he goes somewhere else and proves he is a good player. I'm trying to avoid that.
Right.
But looking at the players who we have to choose from, I'm not optimistic about any of them, really. I think Barton is good in coverage, but I'm concerned that his deficiencies as a player are just going to always just put a pretty low ceiling on what he's going to be as a starter. Mm-hmm. And everyone else behind him, like BBK, his career might be over because that injury was just so bad, it seems like. Dublanco, look, there's some stuff I like about Dublanco, but he did not test well, and that can't be completely ignored. And I don't know. I don't have a problem with us being weak there for a year. We were going to be weak somewhere this year because we had so many holes.
Yeah.
But, and we'll get into more of this later when we talk about the Roquan Smith thing. On some level, I kind of feel like we've given Barton a pretty decent chance, and he already showed that he's a very limited player.
Yeah. Well, I think too, this is going to prove out in preseason, because if we'll see how he plays when he's in there, but it's maybe an overstatement on my part. I think it's more probably a little bit indicative to me of liking so much liking the other parts on this defense and feeling okay about them, especially as the cornerback room rounds out. But it is worse still just with me, where I'm just like, I feel like there's a danger, like it's the panel's flashing a little bit. What are you are you more locked in on corners, would you say, defensively on that side when you look at this preseason game?
Well, yes, but we're missing so many guys. It's hard.
But you got Tariq and Kobe out there. I mean, our eyes are going to be drawn there, aren't it? I mean, we're going to be just.
I mean, look, having a guy like a Sidney Jones, who's a veteran, and we saw what he could do last year. Having him miss a preseason game, that's fine. I don't really care about that. Artie Burns, I know he just got here, but he's a veteran too. So if he misses a preseason game, that's fine as well. It is definitely more exciting to see the rookies, right?
Yeah.
Like, you haven't seen them before. They haven't played in the NFL before. You want to see what they can do. But if they really struggle out there, I'm not going to panic, of course, because I understand these are probably not going to be the week 1 starters.
Yeah. I agree there. I mean, maybe I think Kobe might have a good chance to push still. I think they might still be trying to protect Tariq a little bit. I think with Tariq, you got to pay attention to his tackling in this game too. That's got to be maybe our question with him, with how he's covering. Okay, can you, as a receiver convert, how do you tackle? Are you going to Trayvon Diggs this thing, or are you going to stick your nose in there and really try to, make a point of committing to it? Offensively, I'm going to find myself looking at the tackles off the snap. I'm almost going to be, and then it's going to be back to the quarterbacks when I can. And then I'm going to have to rewatch the game because I'll probably be just like between the two having a hard time, not just staying one to the other. Are you going to be all quarterback, you think? Just what is he doing up the line? How is he processing? How much command does he have? Or will you find yourself kind of just letting the, look in other places on the team?
Well, I think I'm going to be watching the tackles like you, because look, whoever wins this quarterback battle, that's good for them. It's going to affect this season. Unlikely that it affects the team very much beyond 2022, because Locke is going to be a free agent. I think it's not great odds we bring him back, and Geno's on a cheap contract. I just don't think either guy is likely to be the guy long term.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the tackles are the most important thing, because that's something that affects this team for the next maybe decade.
Yeah.
If those are your guys, Cross especially, because he's a left tackle, those guys typically get paid and teams are fine paying them. But both guys, that has a drastic impact on your team long term. And because we have some receiver injuries, I'm also going to be keeping an eye on, I'm going to say, Bo Melton, Derek Young, because there's no Swain, there's no Eskridge. And I know Metcalf and Lockett are going to play, but you wouldn't expect a ton. So that means Melton, that means Derek Young, that means
Cody
Thompson, maybe Cade Johnson. Maybe
I'd like
even
to see some Cade. I'd like to see. Can we get some Cade, sightings? I'm just give him some snaps out there. That's all I'm asking for. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah. Maybe even my favorite, Aaron Fuller.
Oh, he's bringing out the Aaron Fuller. Brendan's always good for bringing out the Aaron Fuller. He reminds me.
Yeah, it reminds me of, he kind of makes me think of Doug Baldwin sometimes. Not often enough, but makes me think of Doug Baldwin a little bit. But I want to see who shakes free of this miasma at the bottom of the receiver depth chart. Yeah. Because there's going to be a little bit of room, and a guy can really help their case if they maybe show that they can do return stuff as well. So if a guy like a Bo Melton makes plays in the return game, that's going to help a lot. I really want to see that as well. And I guess also the final thing would be Damian Lewis, because he's still playing left guard. But those are the things more interesting to me than quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I would like to also see, on your point about the receivers, a little bit of, let's maybe utilize some of the fly sweep game with Derek Young in this game. That's what he did in college. That's how he was utilized there on the tape. You need a guy to back up Eskridge, especially knowing now, again, the injury bug's still kind of biting him a bit. Having a guy that could do that versus not having it last year, a real true replacement for that position. And it's so vital to this offense to have a good fly sweep guy that can at least challenge the defenses, can occasionally get those linebackers to slip out of their natural gaps. And I would like to see at least a couple in this game to him, see what he can do with it. Because he's got, by the reports of the body, he's just like what he looked like on tape, which is kind of that, again, hybrid running back receiver body type that can sustain that kind of punishment it takes on those kind of particular plays.
Yeah. And somebody good is probably going to be on another team at the end of preseason, because we're just not going to be able to keep everyone. Mm-hmm. And somebody's going to be good enough to where a team goes, yeah, let's bring him on over. So somebody's probably not going to be around.
Well, and hopefully the guys that make it have taken it, just like we've asked about the quarterback option. You got a lot of guys who's going to jump forward here versus just sort of we'll give it to this guy because I don't want to cast this aspersion on Swain, but I feel that way a little about Swain and how he's gotten the role versus, Philip Dorsett, for instance, remember, had that injury, so he wasn't even pushing him at all. And so it's just kind of like, well, all right, Swain, you make the roster. And Penny, I guess you too. And I'm sure that they separate themselves from the Cades and the Aaron Fullers, but I just haven't seen that on the field to understand that. So maybe that's what we're kind of looking for there. I do think, again, to your point, you made another solid point I want to bury as well, is that, you want to make this team Bo Melton, Tariq Young. What you do on special teams will allow that more than what you do catching the ball or running with the ball, because that's what that guy in the back end of this roster is going to have to do from the receiver position, is be a great gunner, be great on kickoffs. Pete has that. I am going to have a great special teams unit thing to his whole deal. And he's not going to put up with having rookies who can't get it done. You will get cut just on that basis alone.
Yeah, I agree. Other than that, obviously Ken Walker, we're going to see a lot of him because there's no Penny. So you might see him throughout, I don't want to say the whole game, but through a lot of the game. And hey, it's going to be a good opportunity for him to show that he can play on all three downs. That's the thing I'm looking for from him. You can play on first and second down, but can you play on third down? And I always make a big deal out of that because I believe third down is the down that most games get decided on. The team that does better on third down is usually going to win. So if he can get on the field on third down and not inhibit the team's ability to execute, that's a big deal.
It is. And I think that'll have to come down to his pass protection at that point. Can he pick up, as we've seen in recent, I mean, you probably remember this in preseasons, even 10 years ago, used to be this like untold thing of the coaches where they say, okay, we're not going to blitz. Nobody's blitzing, right? Nobody wants to get their quarterback killed. Nobody wants to do anything that's silly, just nobody's blitzing. Now it's blitz are us. And the coordinators are running full steam ahead with it. And so he's going to get some challenges in this game with the blitz, how he steps up into the hole, takes on a linebacker, how he does he go to the right guy? Does he completely whiff it? Or does he go out of the backfield when he should have stayed in? And then trying to keep an eye out for those little things will dictate whether or not he's in on those type of plays. Because I know Homer, while he's not lit the world on fire, he has been good in all of those elements of what you need in that. Not great, but good. And he's going to have to upend that good and do it with elements that don't have anything to do with necessarily just run the ball.
Yeah, I mean, some people actually think that Homer is one of the best third down backs in the league. He is a phenomenal blocker at the very least. So you don't have to be better than Homer on third downs. You just have to not be somebody who has to get taken off the field every third down is what I'm going to say.
That's true. But I guess I put it through. It's like, can you do the well-rounded elements? And he catches half as good. He catches like 90% as good as Homer. And then he gives us 70% of what we get in pass protection from Homer. But then he's 125% in the running game or out of the backfield and catching the ball of what we get in Homer. And I think that's the way that equation sort of ends up bearing out for Carroll and trying to determine who's the guy who should get there. And that's why I say if he can make his hay in pass protection and get that closer to that mark of things, maybe you can kind of even up the score a bit. But that's going to be what it takes, because I think in both those elements, he's probably – with the Homer's in, like Homer's been here a couple of years, been in the program. He had his time to develop. So it's no casting on him that he's not necessarily at that point. There's a lot of, it's again, different skills for a third down back than you normally would ask.
Real quick here, the Snail, thank you for the $2 super chat. Is Geno going to be suspended this year? I think he's pushed that off to 2023 because this year is his chance to prove himself. So doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I don't believe so. The thing with this is Goodell in general has been unpredictable when it comes to handing down suspensions. And he has been even more so that way, as I don't know why, but as it concerns the Seahawks. There's been times where there's just been randomized stuff coming with it. Really, this now? Okay, where'd this come from? So I don't think he will. We all remember the Jaron Reed thing, for instance, Brendan, which was ridiculous a couple of years ago, like just that versus some of the other stuff we've seen. But I haven't seen anything come out that there's a decision coming down. So I'm going to lean with Brendan on this one and say it's probably something that'll be pushed off.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it in a while, which doesn't mean it's over. But it seems like he's managed to push that off, and I don't know. It would kind of feel like it's coming out of nowhere, out of right field, if suddenly Geno was suspended for the first 3 games or something.
The part that makes this hard is that the CBA players 10 years ago gave control over to Goodell to wield an arbitrary hammer in these type of situations. It's what leads to everybody tearing their hair out every time he makes a decision because they're like, there's no rhyme or reason to this thing. Players gave the control up to the commissioner's office. And this means that he can wield that hammer today, tomorrow, or 2 months from now, or a year from now, depending on what he feels and thinks. And they gave that up. You don't have to be convicted of the DUI. Simply him being arrested for it is enough for the commissioner to grab his hammer and go, okay, I'm ready. And so that's the part where I think making the prediction on that's kind of a fool's errand a little bit because we just don't know.
Absolutely. All right. Eric Gilbertson, thank you for the $2 as well. Blythe sets the tone, but unknown. Thoughts? I assume you just mean that Blythe being at center is going to be better than anything we've had in a while, so that could change the way our offensive line plays. Blythe's probably better than anything we've had since that 1 year where Justin Britt was good, which was like, 2016, 2017? But I still just kind of view him as a stopgap half measure, personally.
I'm with Brendan on this one where I don't think that there's a significant upgrade versus what you've had. It's an upgrade, but that's as much because you've had bargain basement play from the position, and now you're going up to maybe a little bit closer to mid prices. He was under the Rams. His grades meet this out at kind of about an average player, a little bit better in some years, a little bit worse in some years, but right around that average line that you would take a look at. If you're looking for the two main upshots for me that I like a lot about bringing this guy in, it's the mobility. In this particular preseason game, let's look for seeing how much they do attack to the edges in this game versus in the past where they've been obsessed with going up the middle. Do we get a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 runs outside in this game? And this will be a guy you will see moving in space, pulling in space, hitting a reach block to a guard. So then that tackle can come down and go out after a linebacker in space. You'll see those type of things in this game from him, which is where his impact can then come from, I think. Beyond being just, Brendan, this better talent, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Beyond that, just being a pure scheme fit in his skill set versus what you've had at the position recently should be a boon in itself. And then let's not forget, he's done a whole hell of a lot of playing up against this very style of defense we're adopting and has now been adopted throughout the league, which is the Fangio defense, which is not an easy defense for linemen to play against because you've got the 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and you don't know which corner, which safety is coming up into the man, which gap, and close it off. And it challenges zone teams in a difficult way. And if you have little indicators you can learn pre-snap or understand within the technique of that defense, and he's played years with it on the other side against the Rams too, on their defense and practices, maybe he can bring a little bit of that foreknowledge with him to help slay this McVay beast.
Right. I don't think he's going to be a Seahawk in 2023, personally. I just don't. But I think he will be better than anything we've had since Britt was good. I'll call him good. He wasn't great or anything, but he was good for a little bit there. Yeah, sounds about right. Paul Third, thank you for the $5. Do you think Drew Lock is playing behind a better O-line now than he had in Denver? Why don't you lead with that one, Brandon? What do you think?
The question is wholly built upon the development of Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross. Yeah, from the standpoint of interior wise, at the very least, it's even, if not a little bit better. But then on the tackle edge side of it and pass protection, I think they're going to play better. So I would say it's better by my instinct. I don't have anything yet to base that on, Paul, because this is all my part projection just off of college tape and what you hear from camp and people saying that they'll be good with it. So I think it's going to be that at the end of the day. I don't know if you're talking about interior. You had they had last year, the kid, they had the rookie last year starting. They had the center from LSU with the gargantuan long arms from a couple of years ago. And then I think their other guard position was kind of meh. So maybe even that's better. If we're just taking out the tackles, Brendan, maybe even that's better because it was Quinn Miners. They had Quinn Miners as the rookie at right guard, and then they had Cushenberry as the center. Brendan, he's got like 38-inch long arms. It's like ridiculous. You watch him play center. He's got to like meat hook up under guys when he plays. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Freddy Krueger.
Oh, it is. It's Freddy Krueger. It's like, but they're just his fingers. It's like, dude, how are your arms that long? It's just, and then you play center, and it's like he's got to pull, like he has to stay way back off the ball when he snaps it. It's kind of ridiculous. But maybe that's better because that guy's not – Cushenberry's been a disappointment for the Broncos. If you look at his play, they're waiting for that fire to light from him in the center position. And Miners obviously being a rookie last year, they like him a lot. But they're hoping a lot on his development, and it wasn't good last year. We know, at least with Gabe Jackson and Damian Lewis playing out of position, and Austin Blythe, that's at least guys that they know how to hunker down and at least give you kind of average play for the most part. They may not give you Pro Bowl, but they can at least give you that. So yeah, it took me a while to get around this, Brendan. Sorry, I had to think this one through. Yeah, we're better offensive line. Yeah,
I'm just not convinced that, as much as I like Cross and Lucas, they are rookies, and I don't want to put too much on them yet. I know they've got stuff to learn, but I think the part of this question that, there's a piece baked in there. Denver's offensive line has not really been good either. I think ESPN's pass block win rate metric actually had them much worse than us last year, if I recall.
28%.
Yeah.
28%, 28th in the league. Sorry, 28th in the league. I meant not 20%, but 28th in the league.
28% would be really bad.
I know that would be bad. Well, and it was 20, and then if you want to go, well, that was a 1 year off. They were 26th the year before.
Yeah, so it's not hard to be better than that offensive line, because what have they done to improve it? I know they didn't sign Brandon Shell, even though they kicked the tires on him, and he wouldn't be a big improvement anyway.
No, it's the single, Brendan, from my standpoint with Denver's attack. Sorry, I've been just utterly shocked by this with Denver's approach this offseason with it. I have not understood it at all, because everybody's hammering us in the Seahawks for our use of Russell. Like we had this great player and we did nothing but let him get beat. And like he went to the streets and he's got people just beating him up as he's walking the streets. We did nothing to protect him. We didn't get any bodyguards. And then he goes to Denver now, and they're doing exactly the same thing, where, like you said, they didn't make any moves. They made free agent signings, DJ Jones, Randy Gregory, defensive side of the ball. They did have a high pick relatively after their first and second round pick in the third round, but it became Nick Bonino, another pass rusher. It's a bit odd on their approach from my standpoint with it. And I do think that that's potentially they might be a good team, but if Denver goes into Troublesville, it will be on the back of what they've done in their approach to that offensive line this upcoming season.
The foundation of their line, the left tackle, Garrett Bowles, was terrible until his contract year. I think he was like leading the league in holding penalties. I think he was right up there. And then suddenly in his contract year, he figures it out. You'll have to forgive me if I'm a little.
No, you're right. And didn't he go back downhill the next year too? So after he signed the contract, which was last year, after post-contract, that basically like training camp he signs, I want to say then his play kind of started to dip back. It wasn't at the same height level of the year of the contract year, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So I'm not really buying him either. And as much as Wilson did not have a very good offensive line in front of him here, like we generally took care of that left tackle spot. And when we couldn't, we traded for one in Dwayne Brown. That was the one area, like there's a clear investment here.
Yeah.
And at left tackle, like Garrett Bowles, I know he's talented, but I think he's been more bad than good in the NFL so far.
I agree. And what he does good too on top of this, Brendan, is much like that Denver Bronco offensive line. When they do have a good element to provide, it's a run blocking element. I mean, this is vintage Seahawks offensive line, really, of the first 8 years of Russell Wilson's career, if you look at it in the way it's been sort of built. And they can run block and they can open holes. But I would just be if I was in Russell Wilson's shoes, I would be a little bit frustrated and saying, you guys couldn't have made just sign me give me a left guard, just something, like nothing, not even one. Like they didn't get Brandon Shell even on a deal. Like maybe the development will be there, man. Cushenberry's a highly talented guy. Miner's a highly talented guy, but hasn't been there yet. They haven't produced it yet on the field.
Chase Stern, thank you for the $20. Can you guys talk about Kobe Bryant? Heard he's been really impressive thus far in TC. Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about him a lot already because he's been maybe the biggest star of training camp so far. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, sure. I mean, with his level of college experience, it makes sense that he would hit the ground running, and he really has.
I agree. He played in a cover 3 in college, so he's got the off cover, and they played their cover 3 very similar to how the Seahawks do with their corners at times, where it's off coverage and then react to the man post route, but you're 7-8 yards back at times post the snap. And it's then your job to read and react to it. So he's going to fit nicely into a defense that's going to ask him to do the very same thing. It's Brendan's point. Not only did he have the years of playing well, but you're going to kind of a same scheme you played in college, not the cover 3 stuff, but just that off coverage and the way we teach it. Like they even do the bail stuff there, Brendan, at Cincinnati. Their corners look very similar to like it's drop into the bail even when you're in off coverage, right? Instead of driving on the man post snap like you're trying to be aggressive. It's always in that nature of protecting against the deep ball. So he's going to fit to what Carroll wants out of his corners first and foremost, which is don't give up the deep ball. Now, you talk about his ability. He's got that short area burst more than he has the speed. He's not slow, but it's that short area burst and agility that he has. And then that's mixed with the ball skills. You saw it in the scrimmage where he dived. I think he jumped on I believe it was a route to the tight end, made a play on the ball, didn't come up there to just knock the ball away. He's got both of his hands up there to try to go and make a catch there. We've seen in the past guys who don't have hands, especially from the cornerback position, come up on those kind of plays and they're just tuned and they'll do do the dance. And it's like, well, you kind of could have gone up there and made a play, but they don't trust their hands. He does. Carroll's noted it. They're even trying him in the slot now, which to me is indicative of the fact that they're going, okay, if we get our full strength back here at the corner position and we're really strong on the outside, but we're not loving what we got on the slot, we got to find a way to get this kid on the football field. And that again tells you coaches are very excited about his level of play and they're going to find a way to get him on that field one way or another sooner than later.
Yeah, I heard about that slot thing, which interested me because to my knowledge, did he do that in college?
Nope.
Wasn't aware that he had. So it made me a little worried about Justin Coleman because there's a name I haven't heard anything about in camp so far. Maybe he's not performing and they're like, oh, we need to find somebody to back up Ugo. I don't know.
Justin Coleman's coming off back-to-back 40 rated PFF seasons. That's, yes, maybe he was misused in Detroit and then into Miami. But that's also what it is. The eye in the sky doesn't lie in that stuff. I don't want to lean on it wholly. I don't know yet. We haven't seen yet. To your point, there's been no discussion of him in camp. And certainly when you've already got a guy like, I know Ugo's been a little bit beaten up, but when you're already stacking out there Marquise Blair, Justin Coleman, Ugo Amadi, I mean, you're already 3 deep there and you're putting more guys in there. I know Carroll loves his flexibility and versatility, but that seems a little overkill unless, to your point, maybe they're not feeling as solid on a Justin Coleman who has been 3 years removed from playing decent football.
Right. I did hear today that Blair is going to go back to safety from this point forward because they want him in his natural position. So he's also off the menu for nickel.
Once again, Brendan, I'm glad they did it. I'm not gonna bitch and moan about that they're doing this move because it's the right move to make. Okay, I'm not. But can we? If that's the truth, what you just said is just what we're dealing with here. I'm going to vent a little frustration at the fact that this was what I said you should have been doing from the start. Why did you have him at the slot in the first place? He had never played it in college. It wasn't a natural fit. I did never understand of why that was what I know they're trying to get him on the field, but just keeping him at the safety position as you have had injuries at the safety position and could have used him just being specialized into that range. I know he's had bad luck, health, but this is again another one of these indicators we talk about this team that's a problem at times in the past, and we're hoping they fixed it. And that is, you have player A who's good in college doing this thing, and you like that player, and you say, I like you so much, I'm going to put a draft pick upon you, and you're going to bring him into camp, and you're going to bring him along. And the first thing you do bringing him into camp is say, okay, that thing you did that made me like you, that made me draft you, now you're going to go over there and do that. But wait, coach, I was doing this thing. You wanted me to come here to do this thing. That's what you like to. Yeah, I know. We just want you to be versatile. I don't like it. It still finds us with Damian Lewis at left guard playing out of position. It still finds us with Phil Haynes not on the football field where it's like, let's save the $3 million, put Phil Haynes at left guard, Damian Lewis at right guard and call it a day. Thankfully, they finally did with Jordan Brooks, moving him back to his natural position after his first 2 seasons, playing him out of position at the will. Part of the reason why he gave up over 900 yards at the linebacker position in coverage is because you were playing him vastly out of position. And I harp on this because this is a place they could fix, and they haven't had a lot of success with it of recent, and they could learn their lesson on this particular one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. We've been burned by this a few times now. It seems like, Pete Carroll's kind of like the guy who goes to the YMCA to play basketball. He makes his first 3, and then he spends the next 3 hours throwing up bricks because he made the first one, and he made the first one with J.R. Sweezy. J.R. Sweezy changed positions. It went good, and ever since then, not so much.
Not so much. A lot of misses in there with that, and it's enough so that you got to note it and go, okay, maybe there's something to this. And I maintain hard enough to make an NFL roster, hard enough to make the transition from college, even as an elite prospect, in that it's so difficult, and this is the best of the best in the world, to ask them to also do it under the auspice of changing position. And it just seems to me like you're making it even harder on them when you don't have to do that. If you need that position, go draft that position. That should be in my opinion, more of the approach and how they look at it. But it is good nonetheless to hear Marquise Blair's going back to safety. That's where he needs to be. And he can play both positions. So it's great. He can both. He's one of the few. He's the unicorn guy that is not just a box and not just a free. He has the skill set to do both of those two things.
Absolutely. Okay. One more here. Kirk Stemmer, thank you for the $2. Who gets traded by deadline? Puna, Penny, or Gabe? Well, I think if Penny gets off to a good start, it would make some sense to look into trading him because he's not going to be here next year. Gabe, I can't imagine him having any value, but if he does, then maybe. Puna's a weird thing where if he doesn't play well, he's not going to have value. If he does play well, maybe you keep him and plan to re-sign him next year. So I'm going to say no to that one for now.
I'll be fairly close to you. I'll have one difference for you. I agree. I think it's going to be Penny as your likely guy because that's a team down the stretch loses a running back. They want to still have a dynamic. He's backup running fine. They go, hey, we owe $2.5 million for the rest of the year. We get Rashad Penny. We'll flip you a 4 or whatever. Gabe, you're right. No value there. I still struggle to know if he'll make the roster, he'll be all right, but I don't think you're going to get anything for him. Now, Puna, though, Brendan, I'll push a little bit back on this. What about the possibility of it being a former, I guess they're kind of running more 3-4 looks with the Cowboys, but former Seahawks coach anyway. There was former 4-3 type defensive coach out there that recognizes the fact that Puna perhaps isn't going to be a fit as a 3-4 defensive end. But the snaps I have of him playing off of the 1-tech when he's not also playing 3-tech like they had him try to do last year, he was really good at that. He did that thing really good. That thing that he did before they started moving him around here, he did that at a really high level for the sport. What you ask a 1-tech to do. Maybe we put him back into that role with our team and we'll flip a pick to do so. I don't know if it's likely. I think, again, Rashad's more likely, but I do think he could have some, even if he's not playing well, Brendan, some team might look at it and go, well, you obviously moved him out of what he did well. I don't think you'll get a lot, but something.
I think it's possible, but it doesn't seem to me most of the time that teams value the run stuffers as much as the pass rushers. So they look at Puna and they see a 1-tech and a small 1-tech at that. Some defenses are going to go, he's too small. I don't care if he's good. We can't use him. And I don't know. I guess there's some possibility. Hard for me to believe he'll have trade value if he doesn't play effectively. And if he plays effectively, then maybe we're better off keeping him. Our long-term defensive line prospects are not great with the current roster.
Well, I'm hopeful with him because I think his body type, at least relatively speaking, fits good to a 3-4. He's missing probably about 3 to 4 inches of what you'd like from the position, but he's got the weight that you'd like with the movement abilities from a 3-4 defensive end. But he's never done it in his career, and he didn't do it in college, I don't believe. And so this will be the first time he's ever done it this year. And that does, if it's a matter of somebody gives you something like a 6th, 5th, 7th round pick for him, and at the end of the day, you're acknowledging by that trade deadline point, this guy's just not, we're going to run the 3-4. We're not changing that anytime soon. And who knows too with this, if they've talked about running hybridized fronts, we might see more 4-3 than we're thinking too. And if that case, there is moments you have to get him on the field where he still does fit into what you do. So that could be another way this goes, is twists and turns as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected Puna to be able to play in the NFL at all. So maybe he'll surprise you again.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Chase Stern, thank you for the $5. Can we all agree to call Artie Burns Artie Burnt? He's trash. I think he is trash. And I don't know, man. He's been getting rave reviews so far.
I, like Brendan, have heard that's Chase. I've heard more of, there's been times he's been matched up with DK and he's held his own. He last year had his best year of his pro career. He's operating the same defense. He had his best year of his pro career last year around the same coach who coached him under his best year of his pro career. So I actually know he's a former 1st round pick who is not old. And I think you could make the argument that Pittsburgh's scheme at the time wasn't a fit for what he did where he was drafted. And now he's finding what's more of a pure fit for his scheme. I always say, people look at corners as ubiquitous. A man corner is a zone corner. A zone corner who should be in a blitz heavy scheme is the same as a zone corner who's in a more passive scheme that's just looking to drop guys and cut. Like, there's so many more differences in these corners and what you want from them. And sometimes you don't always go to the right place in how the team picks you. I mean, as evidenced by, we've done this ourselves and bringing guys in that, like, why did we grab that guy if we weren't going to use him for what he does good? And teams all across the board do that. It's not just us. That's an NFL situation you see happens.
All right. So last Seahawks topic that I think is really compelling right now, it's the Roquan Smith situation.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about this one. Short version is the Bears tried to put some stuff in his contract that nobody else in the NFL has, I guess. And he didn't like that. I think they were called de-escalators, where I'm assuming that not performing means you lose money.
Doesn't sound good. It's not the kind of contract language you want to see in the NFL. Did you say escalators? No, we said de-escalator. D like minus. Yes.
Yeah. So he's not happy, and he asked for a trade. Now, I have a feeling that money will talk, and the Bears will come back with a better contract, and he'll get over it. But for the moment, he is going to be in trade rumors. And you look at the Seahawks, we need another inside linebacker in all likelihood. Mm-hmm. We need a guy who's got some experience in a 3-4, which Roquan Smith has. We need a guy who can cover. Roquan Smith is often considered to be the best coverage inside linebacker in the league. And, hey, it goes together, right? It makes sense, right? You think about it and you're like, man, this is a match made in heaven. So what have you got on the possibility of trading for Roquan?
I'm going to go deep dive on this, Brendan, so stay with me a little bit on it because it'll take me a second to get this all out, because there's so many that I think rightfully so in the Seahawks fan base do push back on this one and saying, okay, you're not ready right now. And then you're going to have, it's too much money to then spend. And you're going to have to then spend money on Jordan Brooks next year. And you can't put that much money in the middle linebacker position, which is a devalued position in the NFL. I look a little bit at it differently, Brendan. Everything in my view with this team is always trying to understand what they're doing from a blueprint standpoint. The key being, Brendan, you're the same way on this, not what you want it to be, what you think you're seeing it is, unraveling the story that's unraveling before you've been able to read the back pages of the book, let's say. And I think when we're looking at the story that's unraveling is it's that 2011, 2012 blueprint, which is to build the super team around the quarterback, as we've discussed. And I think the first part, again, to lock in, build the super team, build the super quarterback, build the super team. That's the first part of this. And you've got to do that through a variety of different methods. That's not all just organic growth from within. And we're going to be just like the Cowboys in the early 90s and every draft pick's going to hit. And that's how we'll magically build this all up. It's going to have to come from a variety of different places. You didn't draft Cliff Averill. You didn't draft Michael Bennett. And I know those are free agent signings, but the point being is that you've got to bring from and without. You had to trade for Marshawn Lynch. That's what we're talking about, and I know that's going to be, you're going to give up more for this guy than you had to give it for Marshawn. But the point being is that there's a variety of ways to roster build, and it's all not just around how you go out and draft. So in looking at this guy, to your point, yeah, he's played in a 3-4 defense. All those things you said about him is completely the truth. Again, a lot like what we just talked about with Artie Burns, he's also played within this defense. So we can't make any comparisons to Percy Harvin. We can't make any comparisons to Jimmy Graham or Jamal Adams. And Harvin's different than those two guys in that they didn't misuse him. He was just a guy you knew ahead of time he was a bit of a problem child off the field, and you still embraced it. Those two guys, though, you misused them. You brought them in there. They did that thing. Then you said, we're going to make you do this thing. This guy will be tit for tat. You're doing that here, there. You'll be doing that here. So you'll be having, what you're going to get from him in that respective things. I look at that and I go, this would be a step towards that, building the super team up to take less heat off of that quarterback that you then draft, put less pressure on that guy to have to do because you want to have that super team. And Brendan, beyond this, I think Carroll wants to build the super defense up around that. Not Legion of Boom 2.0, okay? But a great defense. I think he's a prideful guy when it comes to his defenses, and he hasn't liked having them, bent over the last couple of years at times. And I think he's going to take his steps here to go, okay, that would be a big swing to do. On top of, they've done this kind of move in the past. They've done it around the training camp before. So it also fits to what they've done, fits to the type of moves that they would be willing to make in the past. And to me, I'm okay with it because unlike the Jamal one, that was made in desperation. This isn't a trade you're making in desperation. It's, as you said, upgrade what I consider the weak link on that defense right now and get you now back on that step to not just this year, Brendan, but beyond, building that team in the way you're wanting to build it in the fullness of it, not just around 1 or 2 stars, but in really stacking the deck. And remember, Brendan, last point on this, when you're not spending that money on that quarterback, 45, 50, 55, 60 million a year, hey, you got some change jingling and jangling around in the bottom of those couch cushions that you can go find other players that add that you wouldn't normally be able to go get.
Yeah, I think you do a great job summing up the different angles here. And here's the way that I put it the other day. If you built like a high, like that pyramid, the hierarchy of needs for what positions you spend a lot of money on in the NFL, like the top of the pyramid would be quarterback, right? That's the position where a lot of the big money goes.
Right.
The quarterbacks get twice as much as the best players at other positions. The next level down on the pyramid would probably be like left tackle and pass rushers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you go a little bit down, and I would say there you're talking about like cornerbacks. Maybe you throw a little right tackle in there with the way the NFL is going. Something like that.
Yeah.
So you look at the way this team is built, quarterback, there's not going to be a big financial commitment to quarterback for, I'd say, 4 years at least. Unless Drew Lock wins MVP or something, then we're stuck.
Right.
But hey, not a bad problem to have, right?
Yeah, good first world problems.
Yeah. Pass rusher, good chance we're going to be cheap for another couple years because Taylor's on the rookie deal, and I don't think he can get off it because he missed his first year. I'm not sure on that. Mafe, we don't know if he's going to work out yet, but he's going to be dirt cheap for the next 3 years at a minimum, maybe 4. Left tackle, yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
3 years minimum. Right tackle, 3 years minimum. Cornerback, if Kobe and Tariq are the guys, then 3 years minimum.
Boom.
So you've got very little money spent at these positions that teams typically spend a lot of money on.
Right.
Now, here's the question. Do you look at that and go, okay, we are now liberated to spend more money at positions maybe near the bottom of that pyramid? And the positions at the bottom of the pyramid would be off-ball linebacker. It might be safety. We've already kind of done that. Yeah, okay.
Looks familiar.
I don't know if wide receiver would be on the bottom, honestly. I don't think that it's at the bottom, but it's somewhere in the middle.
It's high above. It's a little higher than the middle, I'd say, because it's becoming, as we're seeing with these contracts this offseason, it's one it's got the bullet. It's got the arrow going up on that list.
Right. So you can say, okay, now we are liberated to spend big money on the bottom of the pyramid, which in terms of pure numbers is not optimal, but it still helps your team. It helps your team to have the best off-ball linebacker in the league over having a mediocre one.
Yes.
Or do you go, okay, let's supercharge the pass rush. Let's have like 4 or 5 killer edge guys. Let's supercharge the receiver core and just be like Oregon, swapping guys in and out, and they just run teams into the ground. I can see the argument for both sides. I can see some people saying like, no, we should capitalize on that by getting the NASCAR package of pass rushers and just have guys who can just keep going after the quarterback the whole game. But short of that, I don't think there's any reason to not look at Roquan Smith and say we can afford it. Yeah. Remember, Jordan Brooks is not going to get paid for 2 years because he's entering his 3rd year. Unless he sets the world on fire, I don't think he's going to have enough leverage to demand an extension after 3 years. Only the truly star players or the quarterbacks get that. So you can do that. And by the way, by the time, whatever extension Roquan gets, whatever extension you give him, it's going to probably be at the end by the time QBX gets paid. Right. So by the time you're done with Roquan and he maybe goes to get his $100 million in Jacksonville or something, then it makes sense. So you add it all together, and I think it makes a lot of sense to at least consider this.
You make a great additional point. I'd forgotten about that on top of this in the respect of those positions that are quote unquote, because that's what these people are railing against. Low value position. It's a position that don't matter. It's one of those ones it's at the bottom of the ice, back of the ice tray. It's not your good stuff, but your point again on that is that not only on top of what you said, there are these positions going to be cheap for the foreseeable future. You're not looking to really upgrade them if everything goes as it should go. If Crosby becomes what we think he is, if Abraham Lucas becomes what they think he is, if these guys, and within reason, I don't think you're looking at going out and making a swing to overtake them out of those spots. And so they're going to remain not only not super well paid, but good for you and how they're playing that position, which again just opens that door a little bit more. And I think the one other counter I forgot to mention that people mentioned, they go, well, no, I want to go, then you're going to have to get a linebacker soon. Let's also acknowledge this, Brendan. If you don't want to make this move and you go, I love Cody for this year. Okay, fine. Love Cody for this year. We're going to have to then go probably put a second or third round pick on a middle linebacker in next year's draft. So, and then they go, well, that's what I would have wanted to do. And you go this last draft and you go, well, okay, let's last draft. You would have Leo Chanel, Ryan Anderson, Chad Muma out of Wyoming. You had some options. Maybe that would happen again. Maybe you'd have those, but are those guys as good as Roquan Smith, who was picked number 8 overall in the first round? No. Is it an uncertainty that there's going to be as much of those kind of middle linebackers lying around that second, third round territory next year? As sometimes you've covered some drafts now. Some drafts, there's positional groupings that are empty. Tight end, for instance, we've seen be completely a crapshoot in recent years. So there's no guarantee you're going to be able to find that guy in the future either. And again, as you said, there's a lot, just to me, there's so many reasons here that this does make sense. There are reasons it doesn't, but again, the 3 years out and all that stuff, you got 2 contracts that are tough right now on your books here as we move forward. Jamal Adams and Tyler Lockett. I don't consider DK because you're happy with the value gives you with Tyler and Jamal. You're a little worried in certain respects on things there. You'll be able to get out from under those 2 contracts within about a year from now. And all of the people you said aren't going to be paid 3 years out. So we are in a zone here where you can afford to make this kind of deal and not hinder anything. Hell, even if you want to sign Jordan Brooks next year, Brendan, if they do decide to do it, he goes out and has an all-pro season, which I think is going to be a second team all-pro when it's all said and done this year. And if he does that and he gets paid, I think you can still afford both. It's okay because then, as you said, once you get to the point of paying the guys that have been the rising stars, that are young guys right now, the rookies right now, you can then move on from one of the middle linebackers at that point. Pick the one that's starting to fail. He's out, keep the other one, and then move another guy, younger guy at that time. But I think it would help the defense. I forgot it. The last thing I was bringing with it was, we remember the Niners in the 2010s, right? We remember how vicious that defense was with Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, right? How much they changed the game. Hard hitters, sure tacklers, great in coverage, fast as the day was long.
Right.
Brendan, who was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers at that time?
Yeah, that would be the guy who everyone's trying to imitate right now. That's Vic Fangio.
Wasn't he the mentor of Sean Desai? Isn't he the guy that taught Sean Desai the cover 2 shell? I'm just saying, you've got a baseline of seeing the success of it in this very defense within the last 10 years, a defense, as you said, that's sweeping the nation. I'm just saying, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you got to play this right. You call up the Bears and say, hey, a second round pick plus a little extra. Maybe it's Barton, maybe it's a 5th round or whatever. And if they say no, you're like, okay. And then you wait a week or 2 and then you call them again. If they still have them, say, hey, any progress on that contract? You don't Jamal it. You don't panic. You don't decide. You don't see a team. Maybe there's some team out there that'll give up a 1st rounder for him. You don't go, oh no, we got to give up our 1st round pick. You play this from a position where if you get him, great, but you can't chase it. You can't chase it. So
no chasing, and no, as we say, don't make moves in desperation. You're looking to grab what's now going to be hopefully a depressed asset. And the reason I say depressed is that though he's a great player, Brendan, we're not in free agency. We're not before free agency. We're not before the draft. We're training camp. There's few teams that have the money to spend to give this guy the new contract he's going to want when you go make the trade for him. Seattle does sit in that position with the cap space that they are sitting on. Chicago does too, if they wanted, to your point on that, decide to finally just ante up and be like, all right, we'll not do the Kyler Murray thing to you with the contract. We'll do this legit. They could very well end up doing that. I think you might be right on 2nd round being about the value you have to land at. Part of me had hoped that maybe you could go in and say, hey, we'll give you 2 3s, a 3 and 23, a 3 and 24, and maybe a 5th in this year's draft, and maybe package with a Barton and kind of package that together for them. Part of me is wondering with the Bears on this, Brendan, if not maybe beyond not having a reluctance to sign Roquan, it's as much that we want to look to move those assets that we'd have the $18 million we're spending on Roquan in this new contract. We'd actually like to put that to our offensive line that's not good right now, or somewhere on the get a playmaker for Fields on the outside. And I think that's where I look at them trying to do this. Is they're looking at more of like, how can we adjust this? We love Roquan, but right now the defense is not where it's at. The future for the Bears is Justin Fields.
Yeah, I don't know why that organization is cheap, but they have that reputation, the Bears.
They do.
I don't know. I mean, I understand paying an off-ball linebacker right now probably feels uncomfortable because they're not a good team and may not be for a while, but I mean, I don't know what it is. Apparently no other NFL contracts have de-escalators, so I don't know why you think you can get away with it.
I don't get the whole these, and it's a lot of these owners at times that are these, like, they've been owning the team for 50 years and it's been passed down through 2 generations, and maybe they don't sit on as much liquidity as your billionaire Walmart types. All right, I get that. But then you get reports out from the Packers, who of course give us a look into what the NFL is making team by team in profitability. And I think that they released it a couple weeks ago, it came out, the numbers on it. I think that they said something like NFL teams made like $300 million in profit per team last year or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what are you worrying about that? What are you strapped by at that point? If you're pulling $300 million in profit, your salary cap is only up at last year, $182 million. So you got $120 million of profit there on top of, I'm sure, whatever else you're pulling on your local stadium revenue for whatever isn't just outside the revenue, sharing part of it. That's just, what you get in probably like local merchandise that's bought in the stadium, which is going to be a significant portion on top of that. I don't get the cash strap thing. I really don't. It's not like the NFL is in a dark age right now and it's nobody's watching. We're just having to really scrub 2 nickels together.
Yeah. Mark Davis can't even afford a haircut somehow. It's
bizarre. I know. He's just doing the one sheer. I mean, God bless him, but can't be that bad. He still gets his pills though. So I think a lot of money's going to pills.
Yeah. Yeah, and as an owner, I've said this before, but like, if your top priority is not to try to win a title, then why do you own the sports team? There are other investments you can make.
Yeah, if money is your thing, this is the wrong avenue. Yeah, you can sell a team 20 years down the line for huge amount of profit. But I mean, to me, Brendan, all the much more reason I want to increase the value of my team for that down the road moment when I want to sell them for that gigantic profit that's going to be 10 times, 20 times what I bought the team for. Okay, well, isn't that get a little harder to do when you're offloading a team that's basically in the junk zone of things? And I think it wouldn't completely remove, but it's like they can't do that math, which usually people that make this money or this wealthy do that math very well. But it's bothersome to me. I think it's silly. You hard to compete in the NFL when you're going to be that way. I mean, how you got Cincinnati like selling the naming rights of their stadium in preparation so that they can afford the contracts of AJ Burrow and Chase down the line. You see that? Like, they changed it from the Brown family name to the. I was like, okay, really? It's that tough times, huh?
Mike. I think his name is Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals. Right. He's a guy who, he very, I think, openly values making profit more than winning. Mm-hmm. He's one of those owners, and there aren't very many of those owners left, but I think he's one of them. Yeah. And with some of these owners, I sometimes wonder. It's like the guys who own the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, you couldn't have paid a little bit more to keep James Harden. You'd rather make a profit than win the finals 5 years in a row. Like,
unbelievable.
Sell the team. Sell the team if that's how you feel.
I don't get it at all. I don't. It's not a purchase you make from that realm of things, but we do see the occasional one does it. I don't know what they're thinking, and if somebody's just talked them into it or they didn't do the math on it, but it's like they got that blind spot on it where they can't put the math together on, like, look, you put a bad product, you're going to have less fans in the stadium, which means less revenue to you, which means, yeah. But they're in that lane. I mean, they couldn't even get a deal done in Cincinnati this past offseason with maybe the best safety right now in the sport, Jesse Bates. They're trying to roll him out on a franchise tag. It's like, really? Kid balled out in the playoffs, balled out last year, balled out since he's been there. Pay him. What are you doing? This is how you get bad reputations in the league.
Yeah. You don't want to be one of those teams. Let's see here. The Snail, thank you for the $12 super chat. Abe is a beast. Go Cougs.
He is a beast.
Yeah, I still can't believe we got him in the 3rd round. I had given up on that.
Me too.
That draft.
I thought his team was going to get hip to it and put him on in the first, at the end of the first. One of those teams that's like championship contender playoff teams that drafts well would look at it and go, oh, we know what this guy is. We know what he knew. I guess they just don't trust those Washington State offensive linemen.
Yeah. Do you feel like when we were talking about this before the draft and after the draft, we both kind of agreed that Cross had very low bust potential. Like he might not be a super duper star,
Mhm.
but he had very low bust potential.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way about Lucas in terms of his stability at being at least an NFL starting caliber player?
I do, because to me, a failure of a guy is going to come from a fatal flaw. What's the fatal flaw in Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas's game? The narrative is they can't run block. We can talk about that, but there's no fatal flaw from him from a technique standpoint, strength standpoint, movement ability standpoint. He has all those things, and then he's given you 30 straight starts at the collegiate level prior to arriving here, and that to me is that's also a guy a little bit like Cross, where it's like maybe Cross has got a little bit of the higher floor and still a little bit of higher ceiling. But Lucas is very close to him, I think, from a floor standpoint, and then just a little bit lower ceiling. And that's fine, because that's what makes Cross a top 10 pick versus, Lucas being a guy dipped down, but he could still be an upper end, upper level right tackle, which is of tremendous value in the NFL, especially as you talked about earlier, Brendan, when you match up the two pillars on each side, it holds up the whole rest of the building.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got him super cheap for the next 3 years at a minimum. That's exciting.
It is. Oh, it is. He's one of those guys I'm his most high. A lot of these rookies I like. Abraham Lucas for me is about like pet project. I evaluated him months before that draft, looked at him so close, and I just have so much faith in what he's going to be able to bring. This preseason game, remember to watch this one thing about him, because this is his super skill that you don't notice at first blush off the snap, but watch it in this game. Fastest offensive lineman out of his stance on the whole offensive line. Watch for that in this game, folks. That's something to just pay attention to. It's his little skill he does. It helps get him a jump start, especially when he's pulling in space.
Yeah, I definitely will keep an eye on that, because that to me is the most interesting thing going on with this offense right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think that covers all the Seahawks stuff. We can talk about preseason, training camp, Roquan, mock game. I think we covered it pretty well. Next time we meet, we will have an actual preseason game to go into, but let's wrap things up with another Mariners topic,
Let's go
because
M's.
yeah, things are going good. Life is good right now. So, will the Mariners ever lose another game? No. Okay.
World Series championship 1 or 2? How many you guys want here?
Okay. So yesterday it was announced that to make room for Castillo in the rotation, they're sending down. No, they're not sending down, but they're sending Flexen into the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be Kirby for a few more starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be Logan. It's going to be Ray. It's going to be Castillo. And then it's going to be Marco Gonzalez as that fifth starter. It seems to me that Flexen's been pitching a lot better lately. How do you feel about what do you think went into making that decision?
I think it's more a move to buttress up the bullpen than it is putting their hand on Marco and going, "We trust you more." I agree with you. Flexen has been a more consistent pitcher starting, and he has better overall natural stuff. He just does. Marco's got to be on in his game completely. And if he's even a bit off, it's like he's going to get hammered. But I think that they like Flexen with his ability to come out of the bullpen. And he's not just one of those long arms that you bring in when you're down 6-2 or down 8-2 that you're just trying to have eat up innings. He's a guy to give him another long arm in that pen. Let's not forget, the whole post All-Star break, the bullpen has been heavily taxed. Those guys you're not having the time starters even able to get past 3, 4, 5 innings, and it's really put it on these guys. So you need probably more arms. It's nice to get Castillo back out there in the pen, but you do need some more arms back there, and long arms especially that can eat some innings up when these starters just aren't able to go. So he might end up backing that rotation before it's all said and done with this. This might be just something that they're going with right now as they try to give the bullpen maybe a little bit of rest. But I thought it was interesting as well. I think they don't like Marco out of the pen as much too. I think they like Marco in his starter. Like he's in that mode where Flexen to me feels also a little more like a guy who I can come out of the pen and still do my thing.
Shouldn't matter that much because neither guy's going to be starting in the playoffs almost certainly.
Right.
But I kind of also wanted to give Marco some time off if possible, because he's not pitched great lately. And I thought maybe that could help him get back to form. Granted, he's pitching some of these games in situations where you can just forget about it. Like him pitching in Yankee Stadium. That's never going to work. He's
Right.
the worst pitcher imaginable for Yankee Stadium. So I don't know. It just kind of surprised me a little bit, but maybe it is that thing you're talking about where Flexen can actually be effective out of the bullpen.
And I think you're right on that. That certainly Marco's been a little unstable recently. I think if you were to put Scott Service under a lie detector test, he would tell you, yeah, that's the nature of Marco Gonzalez. That's what you get with this guy. And it's not that it still is useful, but it does come with those little bit of those flaws built in, because when you've got to be so perfect versus some of the pitchers we have on the staff, Gilbert, Castillo, Ray just a little bit, because Ray's got at least the plus stuff. But when you've got the power stuff, you can miss 3 inches here and 4 inches there and get wild swings. But when you don't have that power stuff, you've got to just be painting corners all day. And it's just it's like this much is your room for error. And I think that's what he runs into when he goes out and starts, especially if like you said, he gets up against a tough lineup like the Yanks in a tough stadium that's a good hitter's ballpark. That's the thing with Marco, is he good pitcher for this park, going to pitch to contact. That's the kind of guy you'd like to have a couple of those guys in your rotation. Love all power arms. It's hard to get all power arms, but a guy like that can work well in this rotation because of that stadium and the way it plays, especially when you play as good defense as they do.
Yep. And I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this edition of Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest. So Brandon, thank you for coming out this week.
My pleasure as always, Brendan.
Yeah, and we had over 250 people at one point today. We're still over 200, so things are going great. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to watch and listen to what we have to say. Hey, we're almost there. We are almost there. We've got 2 days, less than 2 days, and we will have actual results to digest and talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be talking about the game before and after. I'm going to be doing some streams. I'm assuming, Brandon, you're probably going to be filling some content with the preseason action as well.
You know it. I'll be live streaming during all the games. So during games, I'm going to be here doing my play-by-play thing on my side of it, but and afterwards as well. No doubt.
Yeah, it looks like I'm going to do it for the Cowboys game. I actually posted a poll to see which preseason game people wanted me to do. I can't do the first one, but the Cowboys game actually beat out the Bears game, which surprised me. I thought that people would want to see the second game when the starters probably go a lot more, but there it is.
I love it, man. I wasn't sure doing it last year for the first time if I would do the doing live streams much, just because I usually get so emotional and in my in my bag a bit with that, especially when they've been playing recently. But it's really it's actually kind of cathartic having the chat there as as you go through the game.
Getting mad watching a sports game is how you get the views. You look at these big time sports fan channels, all their biggest videos are the ones where they just get enraged. So there's a real marketability in there.
Well, I got plenty of that. I do plenty of those bits throughout the year. So I definitely cover that ground.
The snail, real quick. Thank you for the $2. Baseball season is 150 games too long. It is a marathon. But I kind of like having something to watch for 6 straight months every night when I'm playing video games or whatever. So
I'm the same with Brendan on this one. I think we're in a culture right now where everything's about getting faster. We go from YouTube videos that took you down from shows at an hour or whatever to 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and then now we're to TikTok where everything should be 60 seconds. And so we're getting more into this age of everything needs to be drilled down to a quicker process, but there's something within the marinating of a baseball season as you appreciate it and watch it and understand it and helps you to better, frankly, once you become a champion, it's all that much more well-earned because you didn't just sort of lay on your back like you do in the NBA and flip your way into the playoffs, fail your way into the playoffs. You actually had to earn your way to get there. And then you got to go win series. And it's not easy to do. And it challenges you. And that's where you give those teams the respect outside of Astro teams, the respect to give them their due when they win the World Series, because you have to truly earn it. You have to earn it in every sport, but there's a different type of earning it in that marathon. It's 162 games, actually, not 150. So it's a lot. It's a lot, but I like it. And I'm getting more back into it when we're starting to see, better baseball play. I think will help it too for you young fans who are watching baseball. They're going to make adjustments in a couple of years that are going to open this thing up more to you guys than it has now. Understandable why the game's been this post-steroid era and it's been stilted and it's had to now adjust back because the pitchers have gotten better, but the steroid hitters aren't there with their big muscles. They ain't chewing on the greenies that are keeping up in 6th inning in a July 26th game in the middle of the season. So they're all amped up on the bat like they just snored a line of Adderall. They ain't doing any of that stuff like they used to do, folks. It got dark before. It's not getting dark no more. '80s, they did
Yeah.
cocaine, Brendan. They were known for doing cocaine in the clubhouse in the 80s. So you're not in that era anymore. But what's happening with that is the pitchers are dominating. They're going to make adjustments to that. No more shift rule next year, right? They'll eventually, I think, lower down the mound by a couple of inches because they've done it in the past. So it's not sacred territory in baseball. And when that happens, scoring is going to go up. The excitement of the game will go up, and people, I think, will be more invested in it.
Yeah. Hopefully it works too. Hopefully it works because, I mean, baseball was the most popular sport for a long time. And that feels like, how could that ever have happened with where we are now?
Well, the other sports definitely did a better job to me, Brendan, at the end of the day. What they've done the last 30 years, baseball has in his market. And their commissioners' office, like the Pac-10 commissioner and baseball commissioner, have both been eating from the same trough, where they don't understand how to market their sport and how to put it back into prominence, or how to market their stars. And you look at these other sports and they're able to do that, how to turn baseball into a worldwide sport. They've done nothing with the draft, Brendan. Baseball has done nothing with the draft. The thing that the football has turned into this yearly event. And it's to me, they've failed in that respect because they could generate that kind of same interest at that point in the year. But we're in spring. They have it at spring training as the draft. It's just odd. It's all a little odd in the way they roll that out. So that's part of what is the problem to me. But they can still, the stuff goes ebbs and flows, and you never know. It can rise back to prominence to a degree. And I'm not overtaking football. Football's too big of a giant, but definitely could rise back to prominence.
Right. All right. Well, I'll be seeing all you guys later. I'll be seeing you next week, Brandon. We're going to have a fun show, as we always do over on your channel. If you're not already subbed to Brandon, hop on over there, the Hawk's Nest. And before we leave, we got to do it as we always do it. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.